Part 3. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida. Chapter 21. The reason why the Focus civilization placed this strange object here is probably related to the trial. Just as the introduction of the strange object said. The text inherits the wisdom of a civilization. If Gao Qiang guessed correctly, the text on the stone slab should be written on how to successfully complete the trial. Hayukin looked at the ghostly symbols on the stone slab and suddenly sneered with disdain. I can't understand it at all. What kind of crap is written? These written records of the Focus civilization are obviously not within the scope of learning of the Wall of Size. Their civilization level is much lower than that of the Wall of Size, so the people of the Wall of Size simply disdain to recognize those garbage. If you want to analyze it now, it will take more time than a day. Hayukin stripped the stone slabs from the mud wall one by one and threw them behind her. Even without the help of these stone slabs, she thought, she had seen through the structure of this underground altar. Zhuo packed up the stone slabs at this time. She saw Gao Qiang's interest in these stone slabs, and she knew what to do without Gao Qiang saying more. On the other side, Hayukin pulled off all the stone slabs. She stretched out her hand to sweep the vines and mushrooms on the mud wall aside, and then rubbed the mud wall hard. Soon, after the thin layer of soil was rubbed off, a rubble wall made of mud and sand was revealed. The wall looked very unstable. Hayukin showed a clear expression. She stretched out her hand to pull out a stone on the wall. The rustling sound began to emerge. Some piles of soil mixed with gravel began to fall from the wall. Then, the sound became louder and louder, and the scale became larger and larger. Hayukin grabbed the wolfskin coat on her body and wrapped herself in the clothes. Before long, the sound from the wall had become deafening. A large amount of mud and sand rushed in like a flood. At this moment, everyone could even feel the mountains above their heads shaking, like the wrath of the gods. Who would have thought that this wall would produce such a huge chain reaction just by removing a small stone? Fortunately, the impact of the mud and sand was not great, and Hayukin, the only one standing in front of the mud and sand, also blocked the falling stones with a wolfskin coat. Therefore, although the momentum was huge, everyone did not suffer any damage except that their clothes were a little dirty. Suddenly, the vibration stopped. A faint light shone in from a very far place. After the wall collapsed completely, a passage upward was formed. Is this the way out? Gao Qiang was a little surprised. He didn't expect that the Focus civilization actually set the way out of the altar behind the stone slab. As long as the tribesmen who participated in the test had a little respect for the unrealistic gods, or the ancestors and rules of the Focus tribe, they would not do things like destroying the altar like Hayukin. Without destroying these stone slabs, they would never have the possibility of walking out of here in their lifetime. Seeing this, Gao Qiang even admired the existence of the Focus civilization who created this altar. They have been teaching the tribesmen who participated in the trial to learn to question. After all, questioning is a prerequisite for wisdom. Ding! Congratulations, you have found the way out of the Focus altar and successfully completed the trial of the Focus civilization. The prompt sound of the war game came. In Gao Qiang's eyes, the stone slabs collected by Zhuo produced a little light. However, this magical scene seemed to be seen only by Gao Qiang. Others present were not attracted by this scene. You have been recognized by the Focus civilization. Next, you can randomly draw 3 entries from the Focus civilization and choose one. Without asking Gao Qiang's opinion, the war game has begun to draw automatically. Soon, 3 entries appeared in front of Gao Qiang. Courage, this civilization once used all its strength to swing the sword at the stronger. Effect, unlock the recruitment rights of the Focus civilization, and you can train your subjects into Eagle Snake Warriors. Eagle Snake Warrior, ancient unit with characteristics of Focus civilization. They have the sharpness of eagles, and their flexibility is several times that of regular warrior units. They also have the cunningness of snakes, and have a chance to see through the enemy's attack direction during battle. What a strong unit, worthy of being a reward from the A-level ruins. Gao Qiang looked at it with envy. He didn't know what units other lords could recruit. But just from the description, the combat effectiveness of Eagle Snake warriors will never be weak. Maybe they can compete with the Velociraptor knights that Gao Qiang had seen before. But the resources required to train them are definitely far less than those of Velociraptor knights. If Gao Qiang hadn't been unable to recruit soldiers, he might have chosen this option. But there is no if in everything. Gao Qiang quickly put this entry aside. Then he turned his attention to the second entry. Wisdom, you and your subjects can interpret the focus civilization slate, and from now on you can directly inherit all the technologies of the focus civilization. This is another extremely strong entry. If other lords saw this scene, they would probably be ecstatic. The speed of inheriting technology is definitely faster than researching technology. Choosing this entry may even give them a chance to compete for the title of winner in this war game. But Gao Qiang just glanced at it casually and threw it aside. Hayukin and others obviously looked down on the text of the focus civilization. If they tried to interpret the stone tablet, wouldn't they be inferior to their own people? Then, there was only one entry left. Gao Qiang looked at the last entry. Ancestor worship. The focus civilization has some respect for ancestors. After selecting this entry, your people's memory of their ancestors will become clearer. This entry. Gao Qiang narrowed his eyes. It seems that the war game is indeed a random entry. If the first two entries can be rated S, this ancestor worship can only get a B or even C rating at most. The participants of the war game are all new territories. Where are there such things as ancestors? Choosing this entry is basically the same as not choosing it. But, Gao Qiang's territory is a little special. The territory characteristics of the fallen empire have led to Gao Qiang's territory having a history of tens of thousands of years. Therefore, Gao Qiang couldn't help but be curious about what kind of sparks would be produced if he chose this entry. Anyway, the first two entries were useless, so Gao Qiang chose to worship his ancestors directly. At this moment, the sun shone into Gao Qiang's eyes. It turned out that everyone had successfully walked out of the altar during this period of time. Gao Qiang closed his eyes under the stimulation of the strong light. Therefore, he did not see the flash of nostalgia in everyone's eyes. Lei Heshuo even tightened the reins in his hand and silently said in a tiny voice, "We are back, world. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, Mishida De. Chapter 22. By the time Gao Qiang got used to the bright light from the outside world, everyone's expressions had returned to their original state. Hukin once again put on that lazy expression. It seemed as if the slight movement in his expression just now didn't happen at all. Although I don't know why they suddenly missed the glory of the year. But this kind of thing will pass if you miss it for a while. People always have to look forward. For example, now, they don't like activities very much. If some people hadn't gone too far this time and dared to attack them, the knights wouldn't have wanted to stray too far from the wall. Gao Qiang looked at the appearance behind the mountains. Beyond this mountain range is the birthplace of the Knoll Lord's territory. I have to say that in this war game, the birth range of the Knoll Lord is really good. With mountains and natural obstacles blocking their way, it is difficult for both humans and elves to directly contact the gnolls. Only low-level undead have access to gnolls. But at this time, most of the undead should still bury themselves in the soil, quietly waiting for the development of their territory. Therefore, they have become another line of defense for the gnolls. Kyle probably took this into consideration when he used the blessing scroll on Gao Qiang. Even if something went wrong, there was nothing Gao Qiang could do against Kyle to allow Gao Qiang to survive the week surrounded by wolves. It is impossible for humans and elves to touch his territory, and he is extremely safe. Of course, these are all Kyle's wishful thinking. Gao Qiang made an inner estimate and realized that it should be the 7th day of the war game. It happened to be the last day when the pack of wolves was around. It seems that Shasha's plan to return to the Wall of Sighs within a week will not come true. So how do we find that Knoll Lord's territory? Gao Qiang turned to look at Zhuluo, although through the sand map, you pointed out the general location. But behind this mountain range, there are tens of thousands of jackal tribes, large and small. Even if we divide an area, there will definitely be no shortage. This is the information Gao Qiang learned through war games. On the other hand, in the human forum, some big guys from the human race who have played several war games began to analyze the current combat power of each race. Among them, according to the big boss's estimation, it is currently the last day of the first week, if the development of the jackal is not greatly hindered. On this day, the total number of subjects of all the Knoll Lords should reach more than 1 million. This number will be far ahead of humans and elves, and second only to the low-level undead. There is nothing we can do about this. In ancient times, jackals had a great advantage in hunting ability. They don't need to research tools and technology like humans do to increase their hunting speed. For gnolls, their hands and feet are the sharpest weapons. Sufficient food means that more people can be recruited and more soldiers can be recruited. Therefore, they can distance themselves from humans in the early stages of the game and quickly snowball in size. Similarly, the excessive number of gnolls also greatly increased the difficulty for Zhao Qiang to find Kyle. After all, this is the home ground of the jackals. If Gao Qiang acts too aggressively, he is likely to be attacked by a group. Actually, you don't have to worry about this, Zhuluo explained. We have a very perfect set of judgment methods. Oh. Gao Qiang showed a curious expression. Considering that the Fallen Empire has all the technology in this game, it doesn't seem so strange that there are some weird things. But what Zhuluo said next made Gao Qiang feel that Zhuluo was a little too extreme. We just walked in a straight line. Everyone who sees us showing fear must be a guilty murderer. Zhuluo's words had just finished. Gao Qiang heard a rustling sound coming from the grass next to him. Looking down, among the grass, several jackal scouts collapsed on the ground with trembling legs. Their size is only half a meter. Human beings are not looked down upon by them because they are thin and not fleshy. But Tyrannosaurus rex is completely different. In their eyes, the 15-meter-high Tyrannosaurus rex was 30 times taller than them, and its entire body was covered with tough skin and muscles. There was also a fishy smell of meat in his mouth. This is a complete monster, a titan. Moreover, I just seem to have heard something terrible from the mouths of those humans. See everyone's eyes. The jackal scout shuddered again. No, you can't be afraid, you can't be afraid. Thinking of this, one of the scouts gave a forced smile. That we are just afraid, not guilty, do you believe it? Because of the characteristics of war games, all races can understand each other's language. But Gao Qiang and others understood, but Tyrannosaurus rex couldn't understand this. Suddenly, a Tyrannosaurus rex sneezed and accidentally stepped on it. With a loud noise, when the Tyrannosaurus rex raised its feet again, there was only a pool of sticky paste under its feet. Sasha looked at the ground where weeds were mixed with minced meat, showing an expression of disgust. It won't taste good if you add grass. Next to him, Zhuluo turned around and looked at Gao Qiang. He didn't speak, he just spread his hands and shrugged. It seems like nothing was said, but it seems like a lot was said. Gao Qiang swallowed back all the words he wanted to say, such as group together to attack. Would a million unarmed humans attack a Godzilla? He thought it would not happen. So now, the jackals are facing almost the same situation. Gao Qiang even brought more than one Tyrannosaurus rex, but 20. In that case, what are we waiting for? Gao Qiang simply mixed with Shasha. End this war early, maybe we can rush home for dinner before the end of next week. Zhuluo smiled slightly. Although Gao Jiang now had the intention of giving up, didn't he also learn the attitude of treating people as a court official? Zhu Luo was still very satisfied with this. Since it is your order, then, obey your will. Chu. Kyle rubbed his nose. I don't know if it was his illusion, but at that moment, he suddenly felt a little cold on his back, and he sneezed subconsciously. But the coolness was fleeting, maybe it was an illusion? Shaking his head, Kyle didn't think about it. His territory was in a good location. Going southeast of the territory, there was a stretch of mountains that stretched endlessly and could not see the end at all. After Kyle's reconnaissance, there were many cliffs in those mountains that were impossible to climb. Therefore, it was completely impossible to attack across these mountains. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 23. At least, in ancient times, it was impossible. Kyle thought of Gao Jiang, who declared war on him, and couldn't help laughing wildly. He said he declared war on him, but today is the last day of the wolves. Wouldn't the human lord still be unable to do anything? Although the war has not ended yet, it means that the human lord has not died yet. But what can the human lord do? His development time was delayed by a week, and any advantage he had in this war game would be wiped out. It's not terrible to be famous, but it's terrible to be mediocre after being famous. By then, many lords will help Kyle tear Gao Jiang into pieces. And what Kyle needs to do is to stabilize the war weariness of his territory. At present, in the wargame interface, Gao Jiang and Kyle's war weariness has reached 57%-54%. Although Kyle has a negative state of 200% war weariness acquisition rate. But there have been no major mistakes in Kyle's territory over the past week, and Kyle has slowed down the pace of development and taken more care of the mood of his gnolls. Therefore, Kyle's current war weariness is lower than Gao Jiang's. But even so, Kyle has formed a gnoll tribe of 200 people. Forming a tribe of 200 people in the first week is considered a very good development among all the gnoll lords. And achieving this goal depends entirely on Kyle's personal talent. Although Kyle's territory type is not worth mentioning, his personal talent of gigantic size is really an advantage in ancient times. Speaking of which, we should be able to try to kill those giant wolves today. Kyle looked at the outside of the territory with a fierce look on his face. Giant wolves only appear at night. Today is the last day of the wolf pack and his last chance to hunt giant wolves. Most capable lords will choose to take action today. After all, he was confident that he could defeat the lord surrounded by wolves. By now, he should have been confident. The watershed of this game is tonight. Tonight will be the time to decide the leaders of each race in this game. Ding. Suddenly, the full server notification of the war game sounded again. The human lord Gao Jiang killed the gnoll lord Patrick and completed the first kill in this game. This is the first time that a lord was killed by a foreign lord in this game. What does this mean? The meaningful reminder sound of the war game fell, and Kyle's face was a little strange. The lord who declared war on him was also called Gao Jiang. Is this a coincidence? But he just knew the lord named Patrick. Like Kyle, Patrick was also a gnoll lord born next to the mountains. Even because of their close locations, the relationship between the two lords was not bad, and they even had the intention to develop together. But now, Patrick is dead. He became the first lord to be killed by a foreign lord in this war game. Is it a coincidence? Or is it another coincidence? Kyle's eyes trembled slightly. This is impossible, he is staying in the heart of the jackals. There are natural dangers here. To cross from the territory of the low-level undead, you have to pass through too many territories of the jackal lords. So, all this is impossible. That's right, everything is just a coincidence. Put the terrible idea in your mind behind you. Kyle once again focused on the giant wolf he was going to fight tonight. Only by fully concentrating can he feel a little more at ease at this moment. Kyle didn't know that Juluo was looking at Gao Qiang not far away from him and blinked. Not this. Gao Qiang shook his head. Under their feet was a jackal camp that had been completely devastated. In fact, the Tyrannosaurus Rex just came over and stepped on it, flattening all the buildings. It even seemed that some jackals hiding in the buildings were directly trampled into meat patties. Gao Qiang also learned about his own first kill report. The kick of the Tyrannosaurus Rex just now seemed to have trampled a jackal lord to death, and the other party didn't even have a chance to scream. But looking at the name of the lord, it should be the wrong person. After all, Gao Qiang's war interface has not been settled yet. His war with Kyle is still going on. As for Patrick, it was just his own bad luck. It's not good to be born in a good place, but he was born near Kyle. However, because of killing Patrick, Gao Qiang saw many strange lord paths. Congratulations on killing a lord of another race in a game. Do you want to open the lord advancement path, purist? Attack you for killing a lord. Do you want to open the lord advancement path, king of killing? Congratulations on completely destroying a territory. Do you want to open the lord advancement path, conqueror? Too many pop-up windows popped up when killing Patrick. Gao Qiang kept clicking no, and finally clicked off all the garbage pop-up windows of the wargame. These advanced paths were high-end paths that Gao Qiang dared not even think about. But now look at it again. What a mismatch. Alas. Gao Qiang sighed. In fact, the miracle path that Shasha mentioned really made him excited. And the miracle creatures in the jackal territory should be a very good choice to open the miracle path. Unfortunately, Kyle got there first. There are not many miracles in this world. Who knows if other lords will be as mean as Kyle and try to do it? Putting it this way, is it possible that Gao Qiang really has to demolish his own Stonehenge? Lord. Hukin's voice brought Gao Qiang back to his senses. Hukin reached out and pointed at a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which was holding a jackal's arm. The jackal man, on the other hand, ignored the pain and kept smiling flatteringly at Gao Qiang. This jackal is not afraid at all when it sees us. Shasha looked at the jackal with a curious expression. Juluo nodded. It seems that he has nothing to do with those idiots who have no idea of life or death and are trying to get their idea on our heads. Just as the jackal was about to look happy, Juluo changed the subject. But the Tyrannosaurus Rex is tired after walking for so long, so it would be good to use it as ready-made fodder. The jackal's face trembled. In the end, it was extremely difficult to maintain a flattering smile in Juluo's eyes. Okay. Gao Qiang interrupted Juluo's words. He saw Juluo's plan. Juluo wanted to be the villain himself and break through the psychological defense of the jackal. Whatever Gao Qiang wanted to ask next, he naturally told everything he knew. Sure enough, after Gao Qiang stopped Juluo, the jackal showed a grateful expression. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Gao Qiang asked directly, "Do you know where Kyle's territory is? Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, Mi. Chapter 24. Kyle. Hearing this familiar name, the jackal was obviously stunned. Was it that bastard who attracted these monsters? At present, all the lords have been trampled to death by the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and the loyalty of these recruited people has long been reduced to zero, not to mention that Kyle is not even his lord. Therefore, betraying Kyle's position did not put any psychological pressure on him at all. Of course I know, the jackal looked at Gao Qiang with a flattering smile. He understood that at least he didn't have to die. As for Kyle, he is not his own lord, so who cares about his life and death? Gao Qiang nodded. The knight on the Tyrannosaurus Rex gently pulled the reins, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex put the jackal down directly. After being put down, he had no intention of escaping. Of course, Gao Qiang is not afraid of him running away. With a small body of only half a meter, even if Gao Qiang asked him to run 20 steps first, the Tyrannosaurus Rex could kill him in one bite. Please come this way. The jackal quickly adapted to his role as the leader and walked in front to guide Gao Qiang. Kyle doesn't know yet that the crisis is approaching. Now that the sky is getting darker, Kyle is busy preparing for the final showdown with the giant wolf. In a daze, he seemed to be able to hear the sound of something giant moving nearby, probably because he was too nervous. After all, even if Kyle already has close to 200 gnolls in his territory, he can't say that he has any intention of completely defeating the 3 giant wolves. Boom! Just when Kyle was thinking this, he suddenly felt the ground behind him shake. A shadow fell over Kyle. God, why did it get dark so quickly? Tick-tock. Tick-tock. A few huge droplets of water landed on the top of Kyle's head. Kyle reached out and touched his head in confusion. Why is it raining now? Look up there. A joking voice came from above Kyle. Kyle looked up subconsciously, and what he saw was the bloody mouth of a huge thing. And the water droplets just now were not raindrops at all, but the saliva of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Without hesitation at all, Kyle rolled on the spot and avoided the Tyrannosaurus Rex's bite attack. The action is quite fast. Gao Qiang looked at Kyle's movements and could clearly feel that Kyle was not comparable to ordinary jackals. Because of the advantage of Dynamaxing, Kyle's flexibility is several times that of an ordinary jackal without reducing his mobility. If other jackals were facing the attack just now, they would never be able to escape. So, you are Kyle. Gao Qiang's voice continued to come. At the feet of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, another jackal looked at Gao Qiang with a flattering smile. If there isn't a second gnoll lord named Kyle nearby, he should be the guy you want to find. Hearing this, Kyle glared angrily. At this moment, he had no idea who had attracted these monsters. What frightened Kyle the most was that the only person who could seek revenge at this point in time was the human lord. But how is that possible? Right now this is the hinterland of the jackals, and that mountain range is simply insurmountable, not even by the monsters under Gao Qiang. How did Gao Qiang get here? Did he fly here? Although I have thought about many things in my mind. But Kyle quietly retreated step by step. Just as he was about to leave the attack range of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, he saw the jackal on the opposite side let out a loud scream. Sir, he is going to run away. Grass. Kyle could only roll on the spot again, avoiding another attack from the Tyrannosaurus Rex. But this time, he rolled to the core building of the territory. It was a small thatched house. Although it was nothing, in ancient times it was pretty good to have a building that could shelter from the wind and rain. It's just that if it's used to stop the Tyrannosaurus Rex, it's totally ridiculous. The Tyrannosaurus Rex could completely crush this tiny building with one kick. Gao Qiang put his hands on the bamboo basket and watched Kyle running around calmly. If Gao Qiang and Kyle were face to face at this moment, Kyle might be a head above Gao Qiang. But now that Gao Qiang is riding on the body of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, he sees everyone as a bidder. The Kyle that he had been thinking about for several days seemed to be nothing more than that. At this time, the jackal troops in Kyle's territory also noticed the situation here and surrounded them one after another. There seemed to be a large number of people, but in the face of the ravages of 20 Tyrannosaurus Rex, not a single jackal dared to step forward. Looking at it this way, those jackals looked more like theatergoers. Kyle was furious. But there was nothing he could do. If the people of the territory are forcibly ordered to launch a death-defying offensive, the loyalty of the people of the territory will inevitably be greatly reduced. But now it seems that not only loyalty, but war exhaustion will soon become a big mountain weighing on Kyle's head. War exhaustion add 3%. War exhaustion add 1%. Every time Kyle flees, his war exhaustion level increases by 1 point. In a short period of time, Kyle's war exhaustion level has surpassed that of Gao Qiang. Enough. Kyle finally couldn't help but roared. The reason why the Tyrannosaurus Rex stopped was not because Kyle's roar frightened them, but because the high power stopped the knights from moving. He was a little curious what Kyle wanted to say next. Kyle first glared angrily at the leader at the foot of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Then he looked at Gao Qiang with fearful eyes. He doesn't understand. He didn't understand at all how Gao Qiang had come up with such an outrageous unit since the game had just started a week ago. It is not that humans have never produced knight units in ancient times. But Kyle has never heard of any human being who could tame a Tyrannosaurus Rex in ancient times. What do they use to train them? With their hairless buttocks, or their stone axes that don't look sharp at all? With the few tools that humans have, it is probably impossible to pierce the skin of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Even if it is a reward for killing a natural disaster with high strength, it is not right. How could a war game issue such an outrageous reward? I can't figure it out, I can't figure it out at all. If you can't figure it out, stop thinking about it. Looking at Gao Qiang, Kyle's eyes suddenly lost the fierceness just now. At this moment, Kyle looked like a dirty little wild dog covered in mud. I admit that it was my fault before, but in the face of interests, I think nothing can't be overcome. Oh. Gao Qiang showed a curious look. Did Kyle just say the word profit? That's right, benefits. A strange smile appeared on Kyle's lips. I'm still of great use to you. For example, Gao Qiang asked. For example, I can board the Jackal Forum. As long as you let me go, I guarantee that you will know everything that happens between the Gnoll Lords from now on. And the topography of all areas where Gnolls are born will also be unfolded for you. You will have a chance to win this war. Gnoll Lord Kyle, please apply to add you as a friend. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 25. Gao Qiang and the others exchanged glances. They all saw the strange look on each other's faces. If Gao Qiang hadn't seen the sand map that Zhuluo had taken out before setting off, he might have been a little more interested in Kyle's proposal. But now, the map that Kyle could provide was probably at most similar to the crude map in the human forum. Compared with the fine sand map left by the ancestor of the fallen empire, it was not good enough at all. As for other intelligence, it was even more of a joke. Gao Qiang and the people of the Wall of Sighs knew more about what this world had than all the Jackal Lords combined. And it was unnecessary for Gao Qiang to know the development and strategic plans of other Jackal Lords. Along the way, the combat effectiveness of the Jackals was obvious to all. A group of people who were traitors, Gao Qiang would be grateful if he didn't cause trouble for them. Sasha rushed out from Gao Qiang with a dissatisfied expression. You are the only ones who are qualified to discuss cooperation with us. I really don't know if your creator was drunk when he created you and forgot to give you a brain. You are just wild dogs that can walk upright, creatures that don't even know shame. Do you think you don't need to cover your body with fur? I don't even know how you can tolerate your sticky organs wandering around without restraint. As soon as Sasha finished talking, Kyle's face was already red, and he didn't know whether he was angry or ashamed. Gao Qiang also looked at Sasha in amazement. Zhuluo said that it would be useful to let Sasha follow him. Could it be that this is the effect? Gao Qiang only knew that Sasha liked to come up with bad ideas and was greedy, but he didn't realize that her sarcasm was also maxed out. It's better to say that Gao Qiang should thank Sasha for not killing him. If Sasha sprayed on his head, Gao Qiang's little heart would not be able to bear it. Didn't you see that Kyle was so ashamed that he wanted to die at this moment? It's not that he doesn't want to wear clothes, but in ancient times it was not worth wasting resources on clothes. After all, they have fur, so it's not like they have nothing to wear. Kyle felt his face getting hot and his head was dizzy, and he didn't know how to respond for a moment. At the same time, Kyle's subjects had similar ideas as Kyle. His face under the fur was red. He stared at Sasha as if he wanted to kill her. In fact, they had already taken actual action. "I'll kill you." Not knowing what to say, Kyle simply roared and rushed towards Gao-Chiang and Sasha. At this moment, he was not afraid of any Tyrannosaurus Rex, and the cooperation was forgotten. If he didn't kill Sasha, he probably wouldn't be able to sleep well in the future. The jackals under Kyle's command also made the same move. Even the best-tempered races could not tolerate such insults, not to mention that they were bloodthirsty and brutal jackals. On the contrary, the jackal who led the way saw the scene and hid behind the Tyrannosaurus Rex very cooperatively, with no intention of intervening at all. Roar! The Tyrannosaurus Rex roared excitedly. What kind of scene would it be if 200 jackals charged at the same time? For any ordinary human lord at this moment, it would be an unprecedented fierce battle. But if the target was changed to 20 Tyrannosaurus Rex, that would only be regarded as a buffet meal. Gao-Chiang only felt his body shake, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex under him had already lowered its head and bit down. A jackal was bitten in the mouth and was instantly bitten in half. As for those jackals who ran to the feet of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the moment they used their proud claws to tear at the skin of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, they realized how wrong they had done. The skin of the Tyrannosaurus Rex was extremely solid, and their so-called claws could not even scratch out a trace. Instead, the Tyrannosaurus turned around and stomped its feet, and a large number of jackals died tragically under the feet of the Tyrannosaurus. Among them, Kyle was relatively flexible. After barely dodging the thighs of several Tyrannosaurus Rex, he found the right time and seemed to want to climb onto the body of the Tyrannosaurus Rex and take off Gao-Chiang's head directly. He could see that Gao-Chiang was the only weakness here. But what Kyle didn't notice was that Lei Heshuo, who was standing next to him, also found the right time. He pulled the reins in his hand. The Tyrannosaurus Rex under Lei Heshuo turned around fiercely and kicked Kyle out. Kyle, who was flying in the air, couldn't turn over, and could only watch another Tyrannosaurus Rex coming over and kicking him back in the air. Kyle, who was 2 meters tall, was not as easy to be crushed to death as other jackals. But he was still very good as a football. The charge of the jackals soon stopped completely. The Tyrannosaurus Rex lazily lay on the spot. Burp, full. Kyle watched the scene with bloodshot eyes, but he could do nothing. Finally, in a collision, his internal organs were injured by a blunt blow, and Kyle died after spitting out a mouthful of blood. Ding! Several war game prompts popped up in front of Gao-Chiang. The original interface where Kyle applied to add a friend disappeared at the same time as Kyle's death. Instead, a prompt congratulating Gao-Chiang appeared. Congratulations on winning this war. Since Kyle was dead, Gao-Chiang could no longer achieve the war goal, so he was directly judged as the winner. As the winner of the war, you can choose one of the following options. 1. Occupation, you can occupy the territory of the other lord, not selectable. 2. Plunder, you can plunder the territory and obtain 80% of the supplies in the territory. Must have occupied the entire territory of the other party. 3. Destruction, destroy all facilities in the territory, and other lords can no longer occupy this territory. Must have occupied the entire territory of the other party and completely destroyed the military power of the other party. 4. Achieve the war goal, requires the other party's consent. The unlucky lord at the beginning should be because Gao-Chiang did not declare war, so these pop-up windows did not pop up. Now Kyle's death has made Gao-Chiang see the result of a lord's failure in the war. But looking closely, 2 of the 4 options are not selectable. Plunder and destruction are of no use to Gao-Chiang. In this case, let's destroy it. Gao-Chiang pressed the destruction option. The next moment, a breeze blew, and the thatched house in Kyle's territory was blown away by the wind and floated away. if there were no Knoll body on the ground. I'm afraid no one would believe that a Knoll tribe once lived here. Awoo! Unknowingly, night has fallen. 3 giant wolves walked out of the forest. Today is the last day of the wolf pack. I don't know if this giant wolf was attracted by Kyle or other Knoll lords. But halfway through, the 3 giant wolves suddenly stopped. It seems that something is wrong. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 26. Barbecue. Shash's shout made all the Tyrannosaurus Rex look towards the giant wolf. Now that they have stepped into everyone's sight, they naturally have no chance to escape. Before several giant wolves could escape with their tails between their legs, they were overtaken by the Tyrannosaurus Rex and bit off their heads. But then, the Tyrannosaurus Rex spat the giant wolf's head aside. They are already too full, and they will definitely not have the stomach to eat the wolf meat tonight. But at this moment, the sound of the war game came. Congratulations to the Knoll Lord Saha, for defeating the wolves surrounded by natural disasters and becoming the second lord in this game to solve natural disasters. Oh! Gao Qiang looked at the corpses of the 3 giant wolves and looked behind him playfully. There, cold sweat was dripping from the hair of the jackal who was guiding the way. Exposed. He was even quietly lighting a bonfire just now. He didn't look surprised at all by the giant wolf's arrival. Only Gao Qiang would not think that these are coincidences. As soon as he killed the giant wolf brought by the pack of wolves, the jackal lord was notified to the whole server. Where in the world can so many coincidences come from? Aren't you going to say something, Lord Saha? Gao Qiang asked Saha with a smile. A noble lord, pretending to be other lords and subjects, this is not what you should be like. Saha's legs went weak and he knelt down directly. My lord, please spare my life, my lord. The small one is that his territory was massacred by that Patrick, so he had no choice but to become his subject in order to find a way to survive. This is it. Saha rolled his eyes. Sir, who else do you want to kill? As long as the little one knows, I will take you there immediately and promise not to say anything. If Kyle before was like a wild dog stained with mud, then Saha is more like a pug with a wagging tail. Both in terms of size and ferociousness, they are far less than 1/5 of Kyle's size. He didn't even dare to talk about cooperation with Gao Qiang. But now, Gao Qiang's attention was attracted by the war game. Just after Saha's server-wide briefing ended, more notifications came one after another. Congratulations to the undead Lord Thorpe, for defeating the wolves surrounded by natural disasters and becoming the 3rd lord in this game to solve natural disasters. Congratulations to the elven Lord Jingyi, for defeating the wolves surrounded by natural disasters and becoming the 4th lord in this game to solve natural disasters. Congratulations to the human Lord Gongxing Zhan. Congratulations to the jackal. The broadcast just now seemed to have released some restrictions. A famous lord began to take action against the giant wolf, and the announcement of the war game was also flooded in front of Gao Qiang. This information did not stop until the 10th lord defeated the wolves. Interestingly, Gao Qiang even saw an interesting notification in the 10th position. Congratulations to General Wushuan, the human lord, for defeating the wolves surrounded by natural disasters and becoming the 10th lord in this game to solve natural disasters. Of course Gao Qiang knows who General Wushuan is. It seemed that the things he gave Suyukai had some effect. However, judging from this list, it seems that none of the other lords have used the rare item name change card that Suyukai obtained. Name change cards shouldn't be rare. Perhaps it was because those lords were committed to building a reputation and disdained the use of such props. But no matter what, Suyukai became the safest person on the assassination list. Then Gao Qiang started to think. In this short period of time, 10 lords have defeated the wolves around them. It is hard to say how many more will there be in the future. Just as Kyle guessed, today will be a watershed between the lords of various races. Which lords can stand at the top of this game and gain leadership within each clan will be decided tonight. Looking away from the wargame interface, Gao Qiang looked at Saha and waved his hand casually. This. Saha was still kneeling on the ground, completely unable to understand what Gao Qiang meant. Okay, get up, Gao Qiang said directly. He was quite satisfied with Saha's attitude. As for him becoming the second lord to solve natural disasters in this game, Gao Qiang was regarded as a reward for leading him the way. In addition, Gao Qiang does not have to take into account the feelings of other people in the territory. Sasha's focus was entirely on the upcoming barbecue. After Juluo and others dealt with Kyle, they became lazy again, seemingly not caring about Saha, the jackal at all. To put it bluntly, they have no hatred towards the Knoll race. They are just subjects in the game, not lords participating in the war game. There is no grudge that cannot be eliminated. Currently, there is no lord that the fallen empire can describe with such an extreme word as hate. Of course, there may not be one in the future. Sizzling. The aroma of grilled wolf steak wafts through the forest. This was also thanks to the fact that Juluo brought a lot of spices with him before leaving, otherwise everyone would have had to eat the purest barbecue. Of course, barbecuing in the dark is a very dangerous activity because you never know how many pairs of eyes are staring at you in the dark. The premise is that there is no resting Tyrannosaurus Rex next to everyone. Afraid of the breath of Tyrannosaurus Rex, those wild carnivores that have nothing to do with natural disasters dare not approach this area at all. After the barbecue was done, Shasha was the first to take a piece of ribs. Underground, there are only explosive mushrooms to eat. Although they taste good, you will get tired of eating them every day. This giant wolf rib meat is obviously the best tool to relieve greasiness. Gao Qiang walked to the wolf meat that Juluo had torn, took some and handed it to Saha. Saha looked at the hand Gao Qiang handed over, and seemed to still not understand what Gao Qiang meant. If the meat attracted him to continue to guide Gao Qiang, he could understand it. But Gao Qiang didn't have any lords he wanted to kill now, so what was the point of giving him meat? Could it be a last meal for execution? Thinking of such a terrible thing, Saha's legs trembled and he knelt down again. What are you doing? Gao Qiang frowned, stuffed the meat into Saha's hand, and took another portion for himself. This. Saha took the meat and looked like he didn't dare to eat it. Just give it to you and eat it, Juluo said directly on the side. When facing people other than the people of the Wall of Sighs, she seemed to have less patience. The so-called thunder and rain are all the grace of the king. Since Gao Qiang handed over the meat, it was a gift from the fallen empire. Saha's timid actions made Juluo a little annoyed. In fact, the meat was roasted by her own hands. Could she poison Saha to death? Okay, how about your story? Gao Qiang gave a reason and showed a curious look. Saha said that Patrick slaughtered his territory, and Gao Qiang was really curious about it. Of course, there was no sympathy or other emotions in it. It was just that Sasha told too many stories along the way, and Gao Qiang suddenly liked the feeling of listening to stories. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 27. Hearing that there was something fun, the knights on the side also tied their reins to the tree and sat around. Who would hate to hear fun? Seeing everyone gathered around, Saha was frightened and moved closer to the fire. He didn't know that these guys were very combative at first glance. They didn't think about their next big strategy, small tactics, and how to gain a greater advantage. Why were they interested in their own unlucky stories? But now all eyes were on him, and Saha didn't dare not say it. He simply made up his mind, bit a bite of wolf meat, and told all his experiences in the past few days. Compared with Patrick and Kyle, Saha didn't do well among the jackals. For a few days, Saha had no more than 10 people under his command. Obviously, he was just like Gao Qiang before entering the war game, thinking about how to get through this first war game. As long as he survived this game, he would be safe. In fact, Saha's luck was really good. The place where he was born is located in the heart of the knolls, and is protected by the natural barriers of the mountains, which is enough to isolate the war with foreign tribes. At the same time, this is also the farthest place from the main battlefield of the knolls. In theory, as long as the knolls are not defeated across the board, Saha will definitely survive this game. But the bad thing is that the knoll lords around Saha are too capable. Even in the heart of the knolls, they have not extinguished their desire to make a career. Therefore, Saha became their victim. The reason why Patrick slaughtered Saha's people and destroyed Saha's territory is actually very simple. He wants to take the Lord path, traitor. As long as you kill a lord of the same race in a game, you can step into this path. And this path is a path that tends to the middle and late stages. It is not very useful in the early stage, but after upgrading to the middle stage, you can change the landing position of your own territory at the beginning of each war game. In the later stage, the traders can even recruit people from other races according to the place where they land. This seems very useful. After all, after the war between races breaks out, the traders can tear off their disguises and give the foreign race a central bloom. Of course, that is just a beautiful imagination. In fact, the way for the traders to advance is to slaughter their own race. Therefore, most traders are loyal lackeys of foreign races. The traders who can advance to the later stage have already stained their hands with the blood of countless people. The traders have always stood on the side of the winner. If Gao Qiang had not accidentally killed Patrick, he didn't know how many territories of the jackals he would have slaughtered. In order to upgrade the trader path to the middle level in this lowest ancient era, it's too much. Sasha was fascinated by what she heard, and she bit the ribs in her hand fiercely out of empathy. Such a bad guy should be killed more times. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Saha also stopped the story, and Sasha couldn't help but sneer. You continue. Saha sighed. Actually, the story ends here. Wars between lords are always cruel. As long as there is benefit, even the same tribe can be killed. Not all lords are like you, Saha looked at Gao Qiang and couldn't think of an adjective for a moment. He is kind-hearted, Juluo reminded. Yes, he is kind-hearted. Although Gao Qiang accidentally destroyed a tribe of gnolls and intentionally destroyed another tribe of gnolls. But Saha is still willing to believe that Gao Qiang is kind-hearted. Ding. This week's natural disaster has ended. The number of lords lost this week is 3,306. I hope you will continue to work hard. After midnight, the reminder sound of the war game sounded on time. Countless weak lords breathed a sigh of relief. They finally had a chance to breathe for a moment. This week's game rules have been unlocked. Week 2, Spring of All Trees. Spring of all trees, a strange warm current spreads from the center of the world to all directions this week. The growth rate of all crops increases tenfold, and the research speed increases twice. The random game rules this time are good. The increased growth rate of crops means that everyone can have more food to recruit more people. The increased research speed has accelerated the progress of the game. During this period, the gap in strength between the lords who have eliminated the giant wolf and those who have not eliminated the giant wolf and other ordinary lords will gradually widen. After all, the lord who eliminated the giant wolf has at least one strange item in his hand. Even if you only draw one herb like Gao Qiang, you can use the characteristics of Spring of all trees to grow quickly. If Gao Qiang guessed correctly, because the lords have developed well, this game is likely to enter the stage of fighting among different tribes early. Natural disasters are not scary, but the lords of the same tribe and foreign tribes are scary. Once the fight begins, it will be a real meat grinder. I don't know how many lords will die in this war. In contrast, Gao Qiang was thinking, sleep. Not sleeping at midnight is a disgrace to the hedonist's talent. Gao Qiang didn't care how many other lords died. After all, no disaster could befall him. Snoring. Gao Qiang's snoring soon sounded. Zhuge considerately picked up Gao Qiang, who was sleeping soundly, came to the campfire, and let Gao Qiang lie on his legs. Inadvertently, Zhuge also heard from Gao Qiang that Gao Qiang seemed to whisper something about a person who was a traitor. Zhuge smiled. As a waiter, she saw Gao Qiang's fear from the beginning. Gao Qiang was afraid of this world, and he was always worried that his safety could not be guaranteed. But he was the lord of the Wall of Sighs. He should not be afraid of anything. Sending troops to Kyle was nothing to Shasha and other people, and it was not even a picnic, just a wild outing. But along the way, Gao Qiang's sense of security was gradually filled. They walked straight all the way. They trampled the ruins of ancient civilizations, trampled to death the lords they didn't know on the road, and finally crushed their enemies. Gao Qiang finally experienced it personally. To what extent can the remaining shadow left by the ancestors of the fallen empire bless them? This also brought a sufficient sense of security, allowing Gao Qiang to gradually play with Shasha. "You're welcome, Lord." Zhuge stroked Gao Qiang's forehead and said softly, "This is the duty of a waiter. Let the nobles be carefree." Zhuge didn't say the last word because he was afraid of waking Gao Qiang from his dream. Others also gradually fell asleep. The knights leaned on the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and Hayukin wrapped herself tightly with a wolf skin coat. Shasha even hugged a Tyrannosaurus Rex's thigh in her sleep, and kept drooling. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 28. Saha looked at the scene with envy. Everyone fell asleep quickly and deeply at the same time. It was hard to imagine that they could sleep so peacefully with themselves as an outsider. When Saha was still alive, Patrick was sitting on pins and needles, thinking about getting rid of Saha all the time. If there weren't other Knoll Lords watching, Patrick might have taken action long ago. So, is this what it feels like to be trusted? Saha's emotion had not lasted for 2 seconds when he felt a blast of hot air. Turn around and look. A Tyrannosaurus Rex was staring at him, sizing him up. Saha suddenly didn't dare to move. It turns out these Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't sleep. Well, Gao Qiang and others don't have anything to worry about. He is the one who should worry now. Saha fully believed that if he dared to move when many knights were asleep, he would immediately give the Tyrannosaurus a tooth-slapping ceremony. Isn't it too much to have a late-night snack? Thinking of this, Saha suddenly didn't dare to think about it. Looking at the sleeping people around him, Saha simply lay on the ground and pretended to be dead, praying uneasily that the Tyrannosaurus Rex would never come over. Ah! Gao Qiang stretched and raised his head from Zhuge's limp legs. Zhuge beside him had already fallen asleep, and Gao Qiang was actually the first one to wake up among them. Now, the second person is also awake. Saha opened his eyes, stood up from the ground, looked at Gao Qiang with tears in his eyes, and found Gao Qiang confused. "What's wrong?" "There's something on my face," Gao Qiang asked confused. Saha shook his head and continued to look at Gao Qiang with tears in his eyes. "Inexplicable," Gao Qiang muttered. Then he turned around and shook Zhuge's body. "What's wrong, Lord?" Zhuge rubbed his eyes and sat up. "It's time to cook," Gao Qiang reminded. "Among the people brought out so far, there is a material officer and a noble, and the rest are all soldiers. It stands to reason that cooking is not difficult, but everyone is too lazy to cook. Therefore, the responsibility of cooking can only be placed on Zhuge." "Well, okay." Zhuge yawned and stood up. After stretching, Zhuo became much more energetic. After shaking everyone awake one by one, Zhuo also started to arrange breakfast. Gao Qiang sat aside and looked at the chat messages in the war game. After sleeping all night, Gao Qiang's chat window was almost maxed out. General Wushuan, are you here? Are you here? Are you here? Gao Qiang silently replied with a 6. But he never thought that Su Yukai would reply to the message instantly. You finally replied to the message. I thought you gave me all the good things, but I was surprised by other lords. I was scared to death. Gao Qiang didn't know what to say, so he could only reply with a 6 again. Okay, brother, I have a serious business asking you. Seeing that Su Yukai said he had serious business, Gao Qiang reluctantly took it a little seriously. What's up? Did the Shangji alliance founded by Gongxing Jian invite you? Seeing Su Yukai's inexplicable question, Gao Qiang looked through his friend's information and replied, no. No one added him as a friend last night. Su Yukai, who was far away in the Chang'an Mountains, felt inexplicably disappointed when he saw Gao Qiang's reply. He actually had some guesses about Gao Qiang. Counting himself and Gongxing Jian, there are actually 3 lords in the human race who have been notified by the whole server. And the lord who achieved the first kill was Gao Qiang. When inviting Su Yukai, Gongxing Jian once said, the Shangji alliance will integrate all the high-end forces of the human race to form a parliamentary system, and at the same time unite all the lords who can unite to jointly decide the next step of the human race's strategy. If Gao Qiang is the Gao Qiang announced by the whole server, there is no way that Gongxing Sword will not invite him. After thinking about it, Su Yukai told Gao Qiang all the information that Gongxing Jian had talked with him in private. After all, if he hadn't been a highly powerful person, he wouldn't have been able to become the 10th lord reported across the server. Rather, with so many rare items, Su Yukai was only ranked 10th, and his abilities were still far behind those of the top lords. Since all this is thanks to Gao Qiang should also have the right to know about the Shangji alliance. As for Gongxing Jian's repeated instructions to keep it secret during their private conversations, Su Yukai had already put it aside. Shangji alliance. Gao Qiang didn't expect that Su Yukai actually brought him some interesting news. Su Yukai now felt that the first kill was not him, so he did not get the invitation from Gongxing Sword. But this is definitely not the case. Gao Qiang knew in his heart that he was the number 1. If Gongxing Sword invites Gao Qiang will definitely refuse without hesitation. He does not want to be bound by such an inexplicable organization. But it happened that Gongxing Jian didn't invite him, which was a bit intriguing. Since Gongxing Sword wants to integrate all the high-end power of the human race, why did he bypass the first kill of the human race? By the way, what else did Gongxing Jian say to you? Gao Qiang asked Su Yukai through his friend. Let me think about it. Su Yukai thought for a moment, and then replied, he also said that after the establishment of the Shangji alliance, he will be the leader and I will be the deputy leader, and we will share the power of the alliance. The more I listen, the more interesting it is. Gao Qiang raised his lips. Since we are going to have a parliamentary system, why do the leader and the deputy leader share power? And if they share power, do other people's opinions really matter? Then Su Yukai said some unfamiliar names, as if they were some of the human race's geniuses who had defeated the wolves. They will serve as elders of the Shangji alliance and have the right to discuss matters within the alliance. What is their relationship with Gongxing Jian? Gao Qiang suddenly asked directly. Su Yukai was a little confused. How can I know this? Gao Qiang sighed. His brother is only good enough to be a general. No wonder Gongxing Jian wants to have a parliamentary system. Gongxing Jian was in charge of recruiting elders, but in fact, he was just trying to make himself familiar with them. By then, no one would know Su Yukai, so how could Su Yukai have any say in the Shangji alliance? In fact, it was just Gong Xingjian's one-man show. But it didn't matter. Gao Jiang didn't remind Su Yukai to stay away from the Shangji alliance. Su Yukai finally got into trouble. The name of the unparalleled general was already resounding in the human territory. Even if Gong Xingjian wasn't there, there might be other people with ulterior motives approaching Su Yukai, and the consequences might be worse. At least in the Shangji alliance, Su Yukai was still the nominal deputy leader. Although Gong Xingjian had bad intentions, he wouldn't really break up with Su Yukai. In that case, let him have fun in the Shangji alliance. And it was time for him to eat. Gao Jiang looked at Zhu Luo. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 29. The remaining wolf meat from yesterday had been cooked by Zhu Luo. The fragrant grilled ribs were put on the back of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which also meant that they should leave. It had been several days since they came out of the Wall of Size, and there was nothing worth Gao Jiang's remembrance in the territory of the jackals. Are you leaving? Seeing the Tyrannosaurus Rex get up and leave the way they came, Saha's eyes were a little complicated. Should he be glad? He should be glad, because Gao Jiang had no intention of killing him. But when Gao Jiang was about to leave, Saha couldn't help but feel a little flustered. The Lord game is not a child's play. Once Gao Jiang and his group of powerful enemies leave, without Gao Jiang's deterrence, where should Saha go? You know, he is now just a lord without a territory. But Gao Jiang still left. Saha's story last night was indeed very interesting, and it also made Sasha empathize. But what does this have to do with them? After listening to a story is over. How could people outside the play care about the fate of the people in the play? Seeing the figure of the Tyrannosaurus Rex gradually disappear. Standing alone in the same place, Saha felt that there were pairs of eyes in the forest staring at him. Without his subjects, he had no sense of security in such a place. Finally, after being silent for a long time, the fear in Saha's eyes gradually subsided. He seemed to have made a decision and walked in the opposite direction of Gao Jiang. There, it was close to the direction of the undead lords, and it was also the location where most of the elite lords of the jackals gathered. Ding, Lord Saha applied to add you as a friend. A message suddenly appeared in front of Gao Jiang. Gao Jiang turned his head and looked behind him, but the expected scene of Saha following him did not appear. Compared with Kyle, Saha seemed to know how to do things that satisfied people. Therefore, Gao Jiang was not stingy with a friend position. Agree. After agreeing to Saha's friend request, there was no complaint from the other side. There was a dead silence on the other side of the friend message. Even after Gao Jiang waited for a while, he didn't wait for Saha to send any message. He shook his head. Gao Jiang quickly forgot about this little thing. The way back was much easier than the way here. Originally, Gao Jiang thought that the disk of the focus civilization was a disposable item. As a result, Hayukin found a place to add firewood nearby. After lighting a few pieces of wood, only half an hour later, the disk where everyone was located rose into the sky under the action of steam until it was stuck on the upper ground. This is actually a reusable facility similar to an elevator. But it is also understandable that the focus civilization spent 100 years to build such an altar. Of course, this trial field is not intended to be a disposable consumable. Of course, the current focus civilization ruins have become an unobstructed passage to the Wall of Size. The road to the Jackal territory is in Gao Jiang's hands. Because he is already familiar with the route, the time it takes to return to the Wall of Size is obviously much less than the time Gao Jiang takes to find Kyle. Only half of the week of the spring has passed, and Gao Jiang has already seen the shadow of the flood control wall. Finally back. Sasha yawned and lazily leaned on the edge of the basket. After being out for a week and a half, she, a noble who does not engage in any production activities, is still too tired. Of course, it is mental fatigue. Sasha's strong physical fitness is destined to make her body not as fragile as ordinary people. Wait, what is this? Gao Qiang smelled a pungent smell of blood and suddenly stood up from the basket. It is normal to have a bloody smell in ancient times. But this bloody smell is a bit special. Compared with the blood of antelopes, it obviously lacks some sheep smell. And this smell of blood always makes Gao Qiang feel a little familiar. Just like the smell of his finger cut by a pencil sharpener when he was a child. But compared to that smell, this smell is even stronger. In addition to Gao Qiang, others also stood up. Obviously, they also found something strange on the other side of the flood control wall. As the Tyrannosaurus Rex passed the cover of the woods, everyone's eyes were bright, and Gao Qiang's brows were tightly furrowed. Corpses, corpses everywhere. Or human corpses. Humans wearing leaf aprons or sheepskin skirts were pierced to the ground by crossbows, or shot into hedgehogs by longbows. Among those corpses, Gao Qiang also saw two guys who were obviously dressed differently from others. A man and a woman, wearing exquisite leather suits, were all pierced by crossbows and nailed to the ground in a backward posture. Is this, a human lord? It is not difficult to see this from their clothes. It seems not surprising that the human lord will appear in this place. After all, Gao Qiang's location is a place of 4 wars. Basically, except for the jackals who are blocked by mountains, the other 3 tribes need to pass through Gao Qiang's location if they want to start a war. But Gao Qiang is puzzled as to why a human lord died at his doorstep. Logically speaking, now is still the development time for each lord, and no one should explore outward so quickly. Let's go and have a look, Gao Qiang ordered. Arriving at the place where corpses were scattered all over the ground, Gao Qiang was held by Zhulo and jumped off the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Gao Qiang didn't even look at the people who were almost naked, and walked straight towards the 2 people who looked like lords. When he got closer, Gao Qiang found that the blood of the man and the woman had dried up. The man was holding a small piece of tortoise shell in his hand. Gao Qiang took the fragment from the man's body and immediately found that the fragment was also a strange object. Turtle divination, strange object. Effect: activate turtle divination, and the user's questions will be guided once, and the remaining number of uses is 0. This kind of strange object is obviously not as easy to explode as the name change card. Since he can have such a strange object in the first week. If it weren't for good luck, this man must be a Tianjiao lord of the human race, the kind that can defeat natural disasters in the first week. But such a Tianjiao died at his own doorstep. Looking at the coagulation of the blood, he should have been dead for almost a day, Zhulo reminded. As a frequent cook, she could naturally see how stale the blood was. Of course, the people present were not cannibals, so they had to find a way to deal with the bodies, which was quite troublesome. Just as Gao Qiang was thinking about why these people died at his doorstep, a very faint voice came from the side. Gao Qiang glanced sideways. The female lord's eyes trembled slightly, and her lips trembled slightly, as if she wanted to say something. Surprisingly, there are still survivors. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 30. Cure her, Gao Qiang ordered everyone around him. From the moment he saw turtle divination, he felt that these 2 people seemed to know something, and it might have something to do with him. Gao Qiang was inexplicably interested in this point. Of course, this is just a casual comment. It was inserted here to dry for a day and a night. Let alone the ancient times, I am afraid that even if it were moved back a few eras, it might not be possible to save it. After receiving Gao Qiang's order, Zhulo stepped forward and pulled out the crossbow arrow. The female lord's body trembled slightly again under the severe pain. But then it calmed down again. The remaining breath she had was not enough for her to make any bigger moves. Boom. At this time, the gate of the flood control wall opened, and an old voice came from behind the door. Lord, Lord. A stooped old woman came out with several long archers. Seeing the incoming person, Shasha's eyes lit up and she jumped directly into the incoming person's arms. Grandma Zuzu. Hey, okay. The old woman smiled kindly and ruffled Shasha's hair. Gao Qiang looked at the old woman walking out and seemed a little impressed. Among the people sitting on both sides of the long table in the Lord's Hall, there seemed to be such a mother-in-law. However, perhaps because she was too old, she did not participate in the discussion at that time, but just like now, she looked at everyone with kindness in her eyes. This is the person I want to kill, Zhu suddenly said. Ah. Gao Qiang didn't react for a moment. It's hard to imagine that such an old woman with a completely harmless look could say such a thing so calmly. Zhuo asked in confusion, what did Grandma Zuzu foresee? At this time, Gao Qiang opened Zhu's panel. Ancestry bamboo. Occupation, ancient noble, ancient witch Zhu. Loyalty, 100. Ancient witch blessing. Introduction, they were once the best sorcerers, until they slowly forgot the art of divination over the course of time. It's not that I foresaw anything, old lady. Facing Zhuo's question, Zhu slowly withdrew his kind eyes. Looking at the female lord being picked up by Zhuo, Zhu's eyes contained an indescribable charm. They saw us from the divination. This was something that shouldn't have happened. What the lord who uses turtle divination may not know is this. All divination techniques in the world today have slowly evolved from the most primitive methods. Therefore, as the ancestor of all divination techniques, from the moment he used turtle divination, when he saw the wall of size from the other direction, Zhu also saw him. Sorry, Zhu came to his senses quickly and let out a long sigh. I am no longer a young man. I cannot stand by and watch as children are threatened in my generation. After expressing his apology, Zhu turned around and left. Several long archers came to Zhuo's side and helped Zhuo pick up the female lord. From Zhu's tone, Gao Qiang heard the hidden meaning that she didn't say. She is old and not as fearless as young people. All existences that may threaten the wall of size in the future should be erased from history. The old woman's kindness was always only for the children inside the wall of size. But to put it bluntly, it's more about arrogance. She never thought that the wall of size was incapable of dealing with those beings. The future is the future and the present is now. People who die now have no future. She can know this truth even without divination. Can you still save me? Zhuo and Shasha looked at Gao Qiang. What Grandma Zuzu said makes sense. Since these people can see the wall of size from turtle divination, they must have some plot against this territory or against Gao Qiang. But they were both young. Compared with the old man, Zhuo and Shasha obviously lacked the sense of twilight that belongs to the fallen empire. After all, they still have some vitality, so they don't care about future threats. How many years had the Focus civilization developed in those days, and how powerful it was, but in the end it turned into nothing when faced with the fallen empire. Try to save as much as possible, Gao Qiang thought for a while and said. In fact, his thoughts are somewhat similar to those of Shasha and others. But more importantly, he knew that this war game would not last long. It is simply impossible for a lord to develop to the point where he can threaten the wall of size. After receiving Gao Qiang's affirmative reply, they led the female lord towards the abandoned warehouse. The remaining Tyrannosaurus Rex knights were disbanded directly on the spot. Can it really be saved? Halfway through, Gao Qiang couldn't help but ask curiously. In fact, he just said it casually. After all, they have become what they are, and there is no way they can be saved no matter how hard they think in ancient times, right? It might not have been possible to save it before, but maybe it can be saved now. Julugo didn't give a very definite answer. Arriving next to the abandoned warehouse, Gao Qiang was directly shocked by the appearance of the outside of the warehouse. This week is already blessed by the 10,000 trees spring buff, and Fallen Empire is also fully equipped with planting technology. This addition is not an addition operation, but a terrifying multiplication operation. Therefore, in the Fallen Empire, both the growth cycle and yield of herbs have been improved to a rather terrifying level. This is great. The herbs that are already inexhaustible are even more inexhaustible. Herbs that were marked as rare objects in ancient times were piled haphazardly on the dirt outside the warehouse, forming a hill. If these things weren't so bitter that dogs wouldn't eat them, they might have been scooped up and used as animal feed. Julugo ordered a long archer to find a large pot for stewing meat. After filling it with water, he put in some herbs that Gao Qiang knew or didn't recognize. Then put the large clay basin on the fire. When the water temperature reaches a certain degree, a fragrance wafts out of the basin that makes people want to drink it. Only then did Julugo let the female lord down. I think this woman's wound is not fatal. It's more that she lost too much blood in her body, so the medicinal ingredients I just put in are the main ingredients of the blood-tonifying soup. Julugo explained while reaching out to feel the temperature of the water in the basin. Well, the water temperature is just right. The corner of Gao Qiang's mouth twitched. Those who know that Julugo is preparing a medicinal bath, but how come those actions just now are more like stewing soup? Taking advantage of the current time, Gao Qiang also looked at the technology tree interface. The method used by Julugo now is one of the final technologies from herbal medicine, medicinal bath. Medicated bath. Introduction: medicinal baths can provide 10 times the recovery power of basic medicines, and the recovery power increases with the growth rate of the implants, and additional blessings can be obtained. There is also a small note at the bottom. Note: the amount of medicinal materials wasted in medicinal baths is a terrifying amount that could not be tolerated in ancient times. Please research this technology as appropriate.